I did see a comedian one time in New York, and she was bombing, so she just went into the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's funny.
No.
And it was so funny. We were just like, what's happening? But it was, I mean, it got a crowd, and it was pretty funny. Just all of a sudden she's like, oh, this isn't working. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
I like that, man. That's good stuff.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
Smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro.
Except that it is necessary because we have shows coming up. So go to RaelynNelsonBand.com/tour to check out those show dates. And JD,
hopefully she will have posted them.
Remind me.
They're not posted right now.
To post those.
But they will be by the time this comes out. I can almost promise you. Anyway.
Cortney Warner. So we start every podcast off by asking, what's the first music you remember loving as a kid?
Oh man. So this is a little bit of a complicated answer because I grew up really religious. So the music that was around in our house a lot was a lot of like Christian music and like church music and stuff. But I was able to listen to like Christian rock as a teenager and a young person. So a lot of like Reliant K and who else did I really like? Yeah, I really like them. And Berlin was another like rock Christian rock band, and Skillet and stuff like that. That was what I grew up like loving and seeing shows when I was like middle school and stuff. And then eventually I kind of was able to get a little more rebellious and sneak in some like secular music.
Yeah, that's what we call it when it's not Christian, and we call it secular.
I understand. Yeah, Raelyn has kind of the same upbringing.
Same kind of thing.
Really? Oh, shit.
We went through some Christian rock on the road at one point. Who were we listening to? You pulled up and we're...
DC Talk?
DC Talk? Oh, yeah. Big Toby Mac fan. We were a big Toby Mac family for a while.
Yeah, see, I'm older than you guys. Striper was the Christian rock band when I was a kid. Striper. It was like hair metal stuff. They were dressed in like... It was all yellow and black, too. And they had stripes on them. Striper with a Y.
Oh, okay. Edgy.
Yeah, I think they still play, actually.
That's weird. I don't know that band.
You guys were...
But I listened to Christian radio. Way FM is what it was called when I was growing up. All the time. That was the only radio station I was allowed to listen to other than old country, you know?
Yeah.
It was just Christian gospel music. And I knew all the songs they were playing all the time on there. It was when I got grounded, my mom grounded me from Christian radio.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I had that too. My mom was like, you can't listen to Reliant K today. And I'm like, no, how am I going to know? It was, yeah. It's funny when I moved to Nashville, I moved here because I wanted to be a musician, and I ended up getting a little temp job. I interned, then I kind of temped with Goatee Records for a little bit, which is Reliant K and Toby Mac's record label in Franklin. Yep. So that was my kind of introduction to Nashville, Franklin area when I first moved here.
Okay, so what kind of musician?
Oh, so I studied guitar, mostly jazz and classical, for 8-9 years throughout like high school and through college and stuff. And I wanted to be a session musician. That was like my goal, was to just play for other artists and to really not write anything of my own, just to like learn everything I could. And then I moved here, and then I tried to do that for about a year. I kind of played around town and, did some things here and there, but I realized I actually didn't like it very much. And so I quit playing music. And I was like, oh, I don't like having a day job and having to try and go out at night. Like, I don't love this enough to do it. And then, then eventually I got into comedy, and I'm like, oh, I love this enough to like never sleep or eat healthy or have mental health ever again.
Yeah, I was about to say, you go from, I want to be a musician. Well, let me find something that's way easier than that. How about comedian? Yeah. Do things that are statistically impossible to make it,
Well, I think with music, what I liked the most about playing music was really just what I liked about comedy. Like, I liked that they occasionally gave me a microphone and I could like banter in it in between whatever. And then I really didn't like doing anything else.
Yeah. I totally get that too, because every band, I've just thought about this, every band I've ever been in, was humorous. I mean, we cracked jokes on stage or whatever, or I was never in one of those very serious rock bands, but it was always some crowd work all the way up to this band. But yeah.
Yeah, serious.
It has its place.
Mm-hmm.
Does it? Though
for some, yeah.
Yeah, it does for some people. I just like every time it gets too serious or artsy, I get this icky feeling. I can't help the icky feeling I get. When it's so serious and this is supposed to like make you feel something. It's like, don't force something on me. You're just
I think the ones that give you the icky feeling are probably the ones that aren't sincere about it
and genuine.
Yeah, because if you're trying to be serious as a pose, it's very bad to watch. Terrible to watch.
Uncomfortable.
I agree.
Like watching a comedian bomb.
Yeah, right. It is very uncomfortable to watch that. Although I will say it's funny amongst comedians, we get a little frustrated when musicians just be on stage and crack a joke and it kills, and we're what the hell?
That's true.
It's like you could just be like, I'm tuning my guitar to drop D, and people lose their shit, and it's like, oh my god, like it's kind of just funny.
It's all in the expectations.
It is 100%. I guess if I whipped out a guitar in the middle of my set, people might be impressed, so I guess that's fair.
And then just put it away. Don't do it. Just
hold it, maybe put it behind my back. I don't know.
Just tune it and then take it off.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if comedians, and like when they're killing time or having to change their string, they just start singing instead of making jokes? They're just breaking the song as they're doing whatever they have to. Can I get another drink? I don't know. I'll be right back.
I did see a comedian one time in New York, and she was bombing, so she just went into the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's funny.
No.
It was so funny. We were just like, what's happening? But it was, it got a crowd, and it was pretty funny. Just all of a sudden she's like, oh, this isn't working. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
I like that, man. That's good stuff.
Okay, so where did you grow up?
So I'm from, I always say Cleveland, Ohio, but it's actually a town called Manaway, which is about 40 minutes like south of Cleveland. I grew up kind of in like a really poor suburbia. Sounds like a paradox, but it is like a poor, like outskirts of like kind of more like a country rural area.
Yeah.
Okay.
We played Streetsboro. Is it anywhere close to that?
That is incredibly close. I used to go to that Applebee's all the time with my coworker.
Yeah, that's what the
Where was
t-shirt's
that?
from. The honky tonk house party. Jay Johnson.
Do you know Jay Johnson?
Sadly, no.
There's a dude there that has house parties, and it's the median age is probably 60, but it's all the neighborhood, and they have potluck, and they all bring food over, and we played acoustic. Pays really well. You can sell a bunch of stuff, and they just set up down in his basement, and everybody sits down, and you play for 45 minutes, take a break, play another 45, boom, out.
Oh, I love that. I love a house show. And Streetsboro, who knew? It's it definitely has changed whenever I go back and visit like my family or go to Cleveland. It is a lot nicer than it was when I was growing up. So whenever anyone says remotely anything cool is happening there, I'm always just like, what? That can't be possible. There's no way. My parents still live there. There's no way anything cool can happen.
Now, have you done house shows?
Oh yeah, I love a good house show. I think I was talking to a friend the other day actually that I think that's my favorite thing to do is a house show. Like it just feels punk rock, and everyone who's there wants to be there, and they looked for it, and there's just like a sense of like camaraderie there. I've done a couple of like house stand-up shows, and they consistently are like my favorites to do.
Yeah, and they usually pay well because everybody's,
like well, the bands
wanting to.
I think we probably get the older crowd doing house shows though, because generally the ones we played, not Jay from Streetsboro, but
what I'm asking is how much do you get paid?
Usually it's pretty good tips because it's usually free or it's like a $5 cover, BYOB. So I feel like people are more inclined to just be like, oh, this was great. It's almost like I feel like sometimes you can get people kind of in like a stripper mentality of like, oh, here's all my cash. You were great because they're relaxed and they're having fun. I never make as much money. I have played strip clubs before. Doing stand-up, and I never make as much money as I would like, but
oh my god, you're Mrs. Maisel.
I wish. I mean, I just did Crazy Horse like down towards downtown.
What is that like? What are you doing? Like, are they stripping around you?
So what was fun about that was the guy that ran that show. He was one of the bouncers there. He's also a comedian, really great comedian in town. And
what's his name?
His name's Chris Reeves. He's a
Okay.
sweetheart. And he ran the show there until they shut down Crazy Horse. But it would be like a comedian, like two comedians and like a stripper, and then another two comedians. But they were encouraged to tip us like strippers. So I had people throwing dollar bills on the stage while I'm talking about my childhood trauma, and I'm like, oh, this is really hitting.
Well, to
Lynn
be
for
fair-
table number 5 over there.
To be fair, the strippers are getting paid for their childhood trauma too.
Yeah.
They are. That is true.
They were just talking about it. It wouldn't be as funny. It would just be sad.
Yeah.
Probably. But they would be naked, you know?
That's true. Oh man, that was my first time ever in a strip club too. I don't know why I never had gone before, but I did that show twice last year. So it's my first time in a strip club at 29. My first time in there, and I was like, "This is awesome. Why do people say this is trashy?" And they're like, "This is like the nicest one around." Honestly,
there's some gnarly ones out there for sure.
Deja Vu was the one that was always.
Yeah, it wasn't that fancy, but it was.
Tell us all about it. What's it like in there?
I've been in a strip club maybe 3 times in my life.
What were they
I'm not
like?
really into it. One time
Yeah.
we took a friend of ours was in from Pittsburgh on Thanksgiving
Who?
Day.
Keller?
No.
Okay.
You don't
Schwartz?
know him. No. But he didn't believe that women got totally naked here because they had to wear pasties up there.
Oh, right.
really?
So we got in this big argument. I'm like, fuck, let's just go. And this is Thanksgiving evening after we'd all been with our parents, and ate. And it was the most depressing thing. Everybody
Yeah,
that's
it's so
in a strip
sad.
club on Thanksgiving,
yeah,
it was sad all the way around. I'm
Sad.
like,
I mean,
here you go. There's breast. Can we get out of here now?
Yeah.
right. You
Really.
mean there were no Black Friday sales going on?
Yeah. No,
My-
this was Thanksgiving night.
Oh,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
My
Anyway,
my boys, they're 15,
Mhm.
and
they both work at a strip club.
they work in a strip club. No, they they
I'm
do
like,
this
damn.
video game. They asked me about if they could do this video game because it had a strip club in it, and I was like,
Mhm.
I don't care. They're like, we're not going to go to the strip club. I'm like, I don't care if you go into the video game strip club. I just want you to know that no strip club is actually like that. They're actually really sad and gross and just kind of icky. Like anytime you see one that's really fancy and nice, it's like there's maybe 3 of those total.
There's probably more than 3,
Right.
but they're not.
6.
That's not the norm. There's some high
Right.
dollar ones,
Yeah, but
But-
and maybe that's the one that's in the video
In the
game. And I
game.
just want, I'm like, listen, it
course.
is not like that. I don't care. It was like, I don't care if you go into the strip club on the video game. you know?
Right. Like
But it
gonna
was
see
what they
something like some like pixelated titties. Like what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny they thought it was bad. Like, can we they had to ask permission,
That's crazy.
Oh.
So how did you get into music, like wanting to play guitar from Ohio? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So I grew up, I was always really interested in like in entertainment and stuff. I did a lot of like acting as a kid. I was in like church plays, and then I did a little bit of, I was also homeschooled. So I did a little bit of like local and regional like commercials, and like I did an independent Christian movie when I was like 14. So I was always like in entertainment. But I think looking over like the evolution of like when I've changed different paths, like I stopped liking acting because I didn't have any control over when I could do it. So I was like, well, music might be something I have more control over. I can just play when I want, and then so I was probably like around like 13 or 14, and I was like, that looks pretty cool. And I remember there was like a band at church, like the church, like like the worship band, and that looked like that was a lot of fun. So I just started playing music, hoping I could like play with other people. And then kind of got obsessed with it. Like I think that's just also more of my nature too, is I find something I like to do and just do it all the time. So that was pretty much it. I took lessons, and then I would try and learn stuff by ear too. So yeah, that's kind of, I really don't have a good explanation for any of the things that I do other than I just wanted to try it, and then I did it, I guess,
What was your first taste of comedy? Like, what was the first comedian you knew about as a kid? Because I didn't know
think
much.
Oh, sorry, I thought you guys froze for a second.
Oh,
we
we
did
did.
for just a second. Hold on.
Are we back?
Oh, sorry, we back. I wasn't, at first I was like, God, I really bombed that story about becoming a musician.
No, we heard the whole story. It was great. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
we're back.
Cool.
I forgot what I asked her. I asked her a question.
First
What did I say?
comedian.
Oh yeah, what's the first comedian you remember loving or hearing about or being intrigued by?
Yeah, my first one was Dimitri Martin when I was like in middle school, because
He's
I
about
think
to play here, isn't he?
he is. Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times, and I just think he's so great. And I remember liking him because like growing up in like the late 90s, early 2000s, like you had like Jay Leno and Tim Allen and Seinfeld and like all like, all those guys that were very famous, had their shows, whatever. A lot of people that were like in the zeitgeist and very mainstream. And I didn't I didn't dislike whatever they were doing, but I was like, I don't know if like these old men are really like my type of humor, as like a 12-year-old. And then I heard through like a friend of a friend about, oh, have you heard of Dimitri Martin? This guy's so funny. And looked him up and I'm like, he looks like a fifth member of the Beatles. Already sold on that. Oh, and he's funny. Fantastic. So
So did you have any designs at that point? At what point did comedy come in? You said you came to first coming to Nashville, I assumed you had like steeped yourself in some secular music and stuff by that point.
Oh
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as secular music goes for that, I definitely like got more into like the pop. I was very into like Vans Warped Tour, pop punk stuff. So I was able to go to those types of tours. I told my mom that like Reliant K was playing, which they were. So I could go and like look at and like check out different bands. And so I saw a lot of like really cool like up and coming pop punk bands at the time. And so I listened to a lot of that throughout like high school and college. And then I just then when I started playing guitar, that's when my parents were like, oh, you should listen to like classic rock because you should learn how to play like if you're going to do this, you should learn how to like play like how really great people do. So I listened to a lot of the Stones, my mom was also a big fan of the Beach Boys. So they were always kind of on even growing up. So listened to a lot of Stones, Beach Boys, the Beatles. And then David Bowie was someone that was a little more rogue because my parents were like, oh, he's too wild for us. But I thought he was so incredible. I had a mullet throughout high school because I thought that was what you should have if you're going to be a rock star.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about like, it's weird that you came to Nashville because you wanted to be like most guitar people or drummers, anybody that grows up, the first thing is, I want to be in a band. You talk about going to see the Warped Tour. And it's weird. How did you even know about session musicians? It took years for me to figure out there were other people playing on some records. I just wanted to be in a band.
Yeah, I think it was just when I was taking guitar lessons too. Like I would ask my teacher, I'm like, so do you play in a band or like, how do you make money? Kind of like, how do you do this outside of teaching? Because I always, I think above all, I crave success and stability. So I'm like, how can I make money doing this? Yeah. How can I monetize everything that I love? And I remember him telling me about like, you can like play in a band and that's kind of harder to make it sometimes, but you can also just like be really like versatile as a musician and play a session and touring and like just know how to play everything. And I thought that sounded appealing because then you could learn as much as possible, but never have to like worry about you being in the face of something, which is funny now that I do comedy and it is just me who does all of that, but but at the time music, it just seemed too intimidating to try and like also I can't sing for shit. So there's also that too. But so yeah, that was kind of when I heard about it, I think. And I just thought that sounded like a cool lifestyle. You just travel all the time, you play for someone else, or you just like go to your studio or whatever. That just all of that really appealed to me at the time.
Yeah, that's a smart move too, because if you can get your foot in this studio world, you can get a lot of work.
Yeah. Man, I have friends now in Nashville who like their whole jobs are like they will sit down at their like MIDI keyboard and like write like a little jingle for like some non-licensing website or whatever and make money doing that. And they like write for like other people and they're on tour with other bands. And I'm like, that sounds like a great life. They own a house. So I'm like, why? Like, yeah, in another world that would have probably been a really nice life, honestly. But
so how was there anything in the back of your mind through all of this and then moving to Nashville like, comedy seems like something I might try? Or did that come after you're like, I'm not going to play guitar anymore. What the fuck? I'll try comedy.
I think I come from kind of a humorous family. Like my grandma, RIP, was like the funniest person that I knew. And she could be very mean, but she was good at roasting. And so like, we were always kind of around that kind of like loud voice, like boisterous kind of people. My parents are both pretty funny. And so I remember I got like my first laugh when I was like 3 because it was Thanksgiving and I like had just seen the movie Mrs. Doubtfire like 3 or 4, and I thought like the pie scene or like the cake scene was really funny. So I got some whipped cream, put it in my face, ran out behind the corner, and went hello like he does in the movie, and that got a huge laugh from the family and like aunts, uncles, everyone. And I think I subconsciously was trying to ride that high the rest of my life. I still am trying to get that giant laugh. I've never had that laugh bigger than that. But
you should try to bring that bit back next time you're
I should. Gosh, I should just like have take a pie to the face. But I think like even throughout acting and all that stuff, I always enjoyed making people laugh, or just like I think also that was just a sign of approval too, of like because I was like, kind of a weird kid growing up, and so if I could make someone laugh, then I knew that they at least would listen to me or like me enough because I'm entertaining them. And so I'm trying to think like even when I got into comedy, it was just more of like I wanted to understand how comedy worked. And so I was like, well, I'll try to stand up and see where that goes. And then I ended up loving it. And it's the only thing I want to do or think about, I guess.
Yeah, that's wild. And you got lucky by moving to Nashville because, you could be in some other places that don't have a comedy scene and a music scene, and you get to like kind of bounce from one and start in the other.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for that because when I travel quite a bit for comedy, and I kind of go around different states and stuff, and like either they have little to no entertainment. Like when I do shows in different cities and stuff, I'm just like, this is all that they have to look forward to, or a bunch of out of town comedians coming in because they don't necessarily have comics of their own comedy scene. And I feel like I grew up in a town kind of like that, and I couldn't imagine still being in something like that as an adult and not having any kind of community or anything.
Yeah, and we get spoiled with entertainment in Nashville. We talk about it all the time. We're looking for bars that don't have somebody singing or playing in it, or you can just sit down and have a beer. It's just, and then you get out from here and like, wow, there's just so many talented people in Nashville in the arts.
Oh, I agree. And like even just like who can show up where, when, and how. Like I saw that Jack White is playing his own venue, the Blue Room, the next 2 nights, and I'm like, oh, like that time I just played the Blue Room a month ago, and I'm like, oh, that's just how that works here,
Yeah. And it's weird. I mean, it's good, I would imagine, for uber famous people because you kind of get left alone in town. It's been that way since the late 70s with country stars. People would nod, in the grocery store, but nobody bothers anybody.
No, not too much. They bother my grandpa.
Well,
here.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, he's got to stay on the outskirts.
For sure.
That's fair. I remember you saying, Raelyn, before I kind of knew like your family history and stuff, that you're like, I have a lot of grandmas. And when we did that, and I don't know if this is okay for me to bring up on the podcast or not. You can cut this out, but I just thought, because I remember at the time, I was like, I also have a lot of grandmas on my dad's side because my grandfather was married like 6 times, and he just outlived all of them. I don't. Then eventually one of them, I think, maybe killed him, but I'm not going to open up that case. We're not going to. But yeah, so I thought of that, and I was like, oh, we have a lot in common. I also have like 7 aunts from one uncle. So
wow, yeah, it's funny when you're talking and you go to say grandmother, and you're like, well, my step grandmother.
Yes,
but because step grandmother is such a different. It's not as common as stepmom or stepdad.
And you immediately just start doing the math, like, all right, step grandmother, how's that work?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was with us too. And it's like, I don't think I even met all of them, honestly. I think like by the time
I never met Shirley, Papa Willie's second wife.
Oh, you had a Shirley? I had a Grandma Shirley too.
Oh, it might be the same one. She said now. It might be related.
That would be amazing. Also, I like to drop this in any chance I can whenever I do music, is that Marilyn Manson's my 5th cousin, also on my dad's side. So
wow.
Oh my God, I'm scared of you now.
I know. No, it's like it's not by blood. I'm adopted, so it's not blood related. It's just by vibes.
You're adopted? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I guess I didn't cover that in that set. It was kind of a short set that we did. And I didn't talk about it then, but yeah.
Oh,
so
the second day was the longest, shortest set I've ever done because there was like 3 people. I would say I bombed for sure. It was the first time that it was just literally like kind of crickets.
Yeah.
And even if they were laughing, there were so few people there that even if they were like, you wouldn't have heard it.
Yeah, you told me about this.
It was awful.
But I put this idea to you. I often wonder if there is only literally 3-4 people in a crowd. If you're self-conscious about making noise and laughing, like, are you going to really let it go in front of just that small amount of people? Somebody might.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do.
Especially it was like at 2 p.m. Like, I'm like, this is just a little. It feels very perverted, honestly, to do comedy that early in the day.
If
like,
you think about it, even if Chappelle or Bill Burr were standing in front of 4 people and doing their thing, would they be just cracking up like they do in a huge crowd of people?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Funny to watch.
One lady actually looked at me and went and like did the little sad lip face, like
oh no. Yeah. I just remember that older couple like sitting like kind of in the back, and I could just tell that I think the guy was having fun, but the woman, at least when I was on stage, she just frowned at me the whole time, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I don't like this either. No one is fun. No one likes this.
Nobody's having fun. I don't know why we're continuing this. It's for the
Right.
kids, I think. We're doing this for the kids.
For the
what this-
kids."
It really was for the kids, by the way. Instruments or something for the kids. I don't know.
Yeah. It's like hopefully they got a nice new recorder out of it or
I was
something.
about to say it's going to be a light Christmas for those kids. It sounds like.
Might have just hurt the kids, honestly.
Right.
Yeah,
That's might have, to their detriment, we performed comedy for them.
They went and charged the kids comedy tax. They actually cost them money. This is your fault.
God, I remember walking up to Missy after, and one of the other comedians, I'm like, "Oh my God, that was terrible." She's like, "Doesn't it suck? Doesn't it?" Oh my God. It really was one of the hardest things I've ever done that day. Like, and it's such a stark difference from the night before, right? Because, and it was a filming, taping. So everybody kind of knew they were supposed to laugh at certain parts. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, but it was just a different vibe. And it was nighttime. Like you said, people were drinking. It was a party feel because it was Christmas. I don't know. It was just a totally different experience.
Comedy is so finicky too. I feel like because I think when I experienced playing live music when I was doing that, and then playing like or doing comedy, it is like music. There is a vibe that can be ruined, but also it's a little easier to kind of work through because people can just be listening, or it's okay to have like if they're having a light conversation or something in the background. Where comedy, it's like any little thing that has nothing to do with you can make the whole show bad. Like, you know, like you can have like the room's too hot, the room's too cold, there was an accident here, there was like a shooting or like whatever, like there always are, like, you know what, all these things that could happen that can affect whatever's leading up to that night, that could ruin it, that has nothing to do with you. And it's really, and like even like the size of the room, like are the ceilings low, is it dark, like where's the bar at, where are the bathrooms, all of that is just so contingent. And that comedy is so contingent on all of that. And it's really been a weird dance to kind of figure out, I guess, you know, and it's not, sometimes it's like you can go in there with your all, have amazing lineup, have like a great headliner, and it still just be shit, you know, because of whatever. So it is weird how quickly the same material can be like transcribed from different crowds, you know?
Yeah. And it's definitely a vibe thing because if it weren't, and it was strictly, you know, craftsmanship, people would have figured it out by now. Nobody, if you didn't do it, once you did your first successful set of comedy, you'd never bomb because this is how it's done. I'm doing the same words, I'm doing the same, but it's completely the room and the crowd. Probably even more so than music because we can play, if the crowd's not into it, you can almost turn to each other or whatever and get in, you know, you played. You can just have fun playing music, and if they don't like it, fuck them. But if you're doing comedy, you in between, you know, you can't just tell your jokes louder to drown them out. You know what I mean? You know, punchline screaming at people.
Right. Yeah. And then it's just like at some point at some point you can kind of, I guess, gauge where you're like, okay, this is not going well for me, so I'm going to do what I actually want to do, which is usually like I feel like there are times in comedy, I've heard other like much more successful comedians talk about this, where it's like you can bomb, but only you know you're bombing because you're doing the same set over and over and you're sick of it. And you're like, oh, the crowd is reacting the way I want them to, but I'm not giving it what I want to give it. So in those instances where you're just like bombing anyway, sometimes I like to just like go a little more rogue and just do some like improv with them, or just do more crowd work, or do some more weird stuff and just see if anything kind of sticks, or just even use it as a moment for me to be like, okay, I'm going to just get this out into the public so I can see how it feels when I say it or do it, you know? Because at that point, who gives a shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's going down with that ship anyway. Crowd, artist, everybody's going down. So you might as well have fun.
100%.
Have you ever thought of bringing music into your act?
I thought about it. I have done, I have a ukulele that I like to fiddle around with, and I did bring it to this one show that I did. It was a kind of it was like a variety show, and I'd written like this really dirty song, kind of in the same vein as like Garfunkel and Oates, you know, like that musical group. But then I was gonna play it as like my set, but then like this family walked in, and I'm like, I can't do that. Like, this is dirtier than what I would ever say on stage, like as a comedian. I can't, you know, do this to this family. So I ended up bailing. And then for a little while, like for some other like more experimental shows, I used to do like this kind of Stevie Nicks character where I'd come out with my guitar and like a floppy hat and like kind of just like talk, but like tell jokes like as like a, you know, 70s kind of rocker a little bit. So that was like something I used to do that got mixed negative reviews. So I kind of quit doing that after a while, but I've thought about getting back into like music in general because I'm getting more into writing sketches and writing like filming stuff. So I'm like, I'm gonna need to have music for these things. So I'm thinking about just like trying to flex that muscle a little bit. You know, so that's really kind of the only other time I've been like, I should get back into music again, just so I can make everything myself.
Yeah, royalty-free music right there at your fingertips.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So-
that's smart.
When you decide to make the transition from music to comedy, were there experiences in when you were trying to make it in the music business or, you know, whatever it is, seeing how you go about that? Could you apply any of that to when you were like, oh, fuck, I'm starting out comedy now? Well, this is kind of how you do it in the music thing. Maybe there's some similarities.
Oh my God, this is like the question of a lifetime because I think about this all the time. So I think that there are a lot of similarities, and I feel like the way I try to I kind of conduct my comedy career, if you can call it that at this point, like how musicians do, more so than comedians. I think there's some brilliant comedians out there, obviously, that I like idolize, but I think there's definitely a little bit of a deficit on how promotion works and how marketing works in comedy. In general, it feels a little bit like antiquated, I think, a lot of times, especially with like the posters and with the merch and just like with how you can kind of like get an audience in. Whereas someone like, the biggest example out there, Taylor Swift, the way she does her marketing, the way she like connects with her fans on like social media, like all those things. A lot of musicians do that. You know, musicians go back as far as MySpace, you know, as far as doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like what like Radiohead and all of them were doing back then. And you know, like I just think there's so much more to be done in that space that comedy doesn't have to be cheesy, and I don't think genuinely a lot of it is, but I think there are sometimes it can be translated as like, oh, this is kind of corny, like why would I buy this shirt that looks stupid or like whatever, you know, versus like make something cool that someone wants to wear, market yourself as like, you don't have to just come off as like this kind of doofy this doofy person to be relatable, you know. I think there can be an element of like pizzazz to how you market yourself and how you talk to people and like what you connect over and stuff too, and like how you do your material. Maybe that's pretentious of me, but I don't know. I just think there's a lot that can be done still that isn't clicking for certain industries, I feel like.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's fun to get inspired too by other people, like you said, like Taylor. And then I look at other comedians too and see what they're doing, promote. And I feel like all of social media, all of the internet, it's just mimicking something else. Everybody's redoing what everybody's doing in their own
Well, that's kind of
little shink.
that's entertainment
In general.
record, music, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grabbing what you dig and trying to improve on it and making it somehow yours.
Yeah, I think it was Quentin Tarantino was like good filmmakers borrow, but great filmmakers steal, and I think that's kind of true to an extent. Like you look at anything he's made, it's always been kind of something hodgepodges of what other people have made in the past, but yet he makes it his own. Which I think that's kind of how I think a lot of art goes, whether or not people want to admit it. You know, no one's had an original thought ever.
Yeah, and that's
right.
That's why Quentin's a genius, because he does borrow from all that. But when you see one of his movies, you know immediately it's his movie, you know?
100%. I'd say the same for like a David Lynch or a Wes Anderson or someone like that. Like they all, like you can, if you do side by sides, like on YouTube and see like, oh, they pulled this from, you know, an old Hitchcock film or something like that. It's like, yeah, that may be the case, but it looks completely different. And you can put something like that through if you have your own creative lens to put that through, then I think that's really where art comes from a lot of the times.
Yeah. And why not mimic the greats?
Yeah.
Well, that's what if you're as great a filmmaker as like that dude, you obviously immersed yourself in film from a very young age and you're just flipped out by it. So he knows more about film than any of his audience does. Right. So of course he's going to be, you know, influenced by a bunch of shit. That's I guess that's the best part. He's influenced by a bunch of shit, and whatever comes out from all of that.
Same with music too.
Same with everything, really.
Yeah, definitely same with music. Like just seeing like people that I like and seeing what they listen to, like, oh, what, like, looking at different artists, like more contemporary ones and seeing what they listen to. It's like, oh, they listen to everything. Like from like they've listened to, and same with comedians too. I think you got to listen to or watch a lot of different types of comedy. And just types of art in general. I feel like with comedy in particular, it's like that is one that you have to absorb as much as possible because you're going to regurgitate like topical stuff or different like kind of avant-garde stuff too. So I always feel like I'm trying to consume as much as possible from everything,
Yeah. Yeah. It gives you it just puts your brain into a mode of make everything funny.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So then you start, so you can start building a set or whatever. And then with music, it's like we've talked about this before, like with Papa Willie, he had like 3 influence. I mean, he had more than that, but like it was church music, Django, and Hank Williams. And that was kind of it. I mean, there were more, but that was kind of it. Those were his influences. And then you get to the next generation and they have all these other influences mixed with those.
Keep piling on.
And then you get to us and we've had all these influences, and then it's just going to be a little bit of all of them, and it's just going to keep going like that. But see, with comedy,
but mathematically,
comedy, like I can't redo The Machine, Bert Kreischer's The Machine, and make it my own.
No,
right? Exactly.
So this is the interesting thing about comedies. But I could like tell a story that's happened to me. It could be a similar thing where I get kidnapped in Brazil or something,
right?
But it wouldn't be the same. And it couldn't be because you can't steal jokes like that. But like you said, nothing's an original thought.
And you can't cover.
Like you and I come up with the same, like we'll say the same things sometimes just because our brains are thinking the same things a lot, you're with your good friends, you'll just say the same thing. You'll come up with the same joke at the same time.
Oh, for sure. And there is parallel thinking and all of that too comes up in comedy. Like, oh, is this, or even in music. Like I remember all that stuff with Olivia Rodrigo and her album that came out where they're like, oh, well, that's a Taylor Swift song or that's a Paramore song. And she had to give them like writing credit, which I don't know enough about that situation to comment on it intelligently. So I don't want to piss anyone off, but I was like, that's just interesting because everyone takes from everything. And I guess you can see where they're the influences in some areas versus like blatantly ripping it off, I guess, too. It's just all kind of interesting how people interpret that,
But then rap has all kinds of samples of the old stuff.
Well, they weren't paying for any of that shit when it started. That's up until like Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys is the first time. They're like, there's no way we could afford to sample all of these songs. But to be fair, they're, it's very cool ways that they're chopping it up, but the original guys should get paid for they actually literally using their not copying it, but using the recording that they've actually put down.
Yeah. And then Taylor got in trouble for her song "Shake It Off" because the player's gonna play, and then it came from like 3LW's song from the like early.
Oh yeah.
Shit.
But legally, there's percentages and stuff like that in the music business. A certain amount of the chorus. It's generally the chorus.
Right.
But it's
generally the hook of the song. If it's
but it was just the words, I think. It wasn't even the hook. Like Taylor definitely changed the melody. It was just the words. It was.
But they were kind of melody changed, but they were in the same kind of rhythm.
Kind of.
Yeah. We had this argument because you were telling me it didn't sound at all like
it. It didn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like it. We should bring it up right now.
Yeah, that's how I felt about some of the Olivia Rodrigo stuff. I'm like, it kind of sounds like it, I guess, but also you can just tell that she likes those musicians. And I feel like with comedy, it's the same deal too, where you have like SNL, I know has to do a lot of parodies and like a lot of sketches do parodies and stuff. And there's like parody law or like and like where you can like borrow. I think it's like 33% of some percentage where it has to be like original or you have to like make it known that this is a joke, that you're not stealing someone else's property, that you're like playing on it. And it's like all very bizarre like laws. And I'm like, who the fuck came up with these, And then in music too, isn't it like you can play 15 seconds of a song and after that, then you have to pay them like on a podcast or something like that?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how that works. We always use our own just to avoid that stuff. But yeah, there is a certain amount you're allowed to use. Maybe not even 15 seconds, but like some radio stations would have bumper music that was like they just loop something and they get it under,
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Huh. Interesting.
And this stuff about people, this is always cracking me up. The politicians that are like, you can't use my song as your whatever.
Oh yeah.
You can, as long as you pay for it. They can't tell you not to use it. It's
Right.
once the first person uses it, it's open for everybody. So whenever I see one of these old school guys come out and go, quit using my music, I'm like, dude, you know the rules. They can do it. I'm sorry, they can. They make a statement, so they don't, but yeah.
Or they can make a statement saying, hey, I don't agree with this person's politics, but they're definitely using my amazing song for their campaign.
Gets weird.
Okay, wait, so you were adopted?
Mhm.
And
I was.
so what was that like? I'm sure that was a traumatic experience.
I guess I don't know anything different. I was adopted when I was 4 months old, from South
Okay.
Korea, and so I don't remember anything. I mean, maybe like my body can remember traumas. I don't like however that sort of thing works. But yeah, I grew up in Ohio with my parents. They're both white and very religious, and I have a younger brother who's also adopted from Korea, but we're not blood related. We look pretty different. Yeah, and so I was homeschooled. I went to church like a couple times a week, like that whole very much in like that whole pipeline of living in that kind of lifestyle.
You did that?
I did too. Mm-hmm.
Really? Oh my
Mhm.
God.
Yeah.
So you grew up here in Tennessee?
Yeah, the Bible Belt for sure. And yeah, church at least 2 or 3 times a week. And yeah, just brainwashed into all of that.
What I
Yeah.
thought was
I drank the
it
Kool-Aid.
still makes me
Me
laugh when you
too.
talk about you were allowed to listen to Christian music and classic country, and then you stop and think about the subject matter in classic country songs.
Oh yeah.
This city.
Yeah, but I didn't think of it. It's so funny. That's
the
why
thing,
it doesn't matter when you're a kid. You don't think of
you
those
wouldn't have thought
things.
about that listening to any other kind of music. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
The old school country songs are just as gnarly as any of the popular music, lyric wise.
So
Yeah.
I did what you did with the sneaking in the secular music when I could kind of
Yeah.
thing, where, well, at first I would ask my friends to make the mix CDs like we were talking
Yeah,
about.
where did you guys find your secular music? That's what
Oh
I'm
man, just through like the
Radio.
church that I went to, because I was homeschooled and went to church. I was double like insulated from all of that. So any of the kids at church who went to public school, I was just like, can you like who's Justin Timberlake? Can you make me a CD with that? Or like, Britney Spears or whatever, and like, trying to get my hands on anything different. And then so like I had a couple of like mix CDs that people made me, or then just once we got like the family computer and I had computer time, I was just like looking up whatever I could look up because but while still enjoying Christian music, like Christian rock at the same time. It's such a funny thing to me to call it that, but how did you find music?
Through the radio, really. That's how I would sneak it in my room. I would just turn the radio onto the secular station. But I remember going to my mom because I felt guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to her and we had a big talk about me wanting to listen to secular music. And I remember me calling it secular music. Like nobody calls it that, by the way.
And she was 28 at the time.
I was probably like 13 or 14. And I'm like, listen, can I listen to this? Because I want to. I have been.
Yeah.
I want to listen to it. But then I would listen to it at night when I was asleep. I would just like feed myself with all this music that wasn't, because I was like hungry for something else other than Jesus music.
Yes, I feel that 100%.
So what do I know before we run out of time? So you start in Nashville, since we're from around here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do comedy. What's your first move? Had you run into comedians, or did you have to dip your toe in blindly?
I had to kind of dip in blindly. So my first open mic was at Bobby's Idle Hour, the original one on Music Row. R.I.P. I know I know they built the new one. I haven't been there since, but there was a Friday night open mic that they did there. So I would go to that. Then Springwater had an open mic right after that I would go to. So almost any bar that has music will probably have a comedy night. The East Room is one that I still go to, and then just trying to figure it out. Like I Googled a lot of like how to do comedy, and they're like, look for open mic nights, like, like a comedy for dummies kind of book, but not really. They don't, I'm sure they have one of those, but just trying to figure out, like, so thankfully with the internet, there was enough resources for me to figure out what to do. And then when I did my first open mic and kind of started talking to people, I thankfully didn't totally bomb. So people talked to me and they were like, oh, you should join this Facebook group, and you should like look up this website that has all of the NashvilleComedy.com has all of the info on any shows in town. I'm plugging that right now.
Cool. I didn't know about that. NashvilleComedy.com.
Yeah, and so they have like all the local shows, like anything you like Zanies and everything outside of Zanies, anything you'd see like at Third Coast or like a Comedy Bar when we had Comedy Bar or any of those places. And then all the indie shows at the bars and stuff. And so that was just kind of at my fingertips. I would just try and go and meet people when I could, and try and not totally suck, you know.
Yeah.
Which is still to this day very hard.
You're funny.
It is wild. It's the exact same thing for the old punk rock bands. Except you would go to the Springwater, was one of the biggest punk clubs around. People would go to. But you would go there and not to perform immediately, but to, if you were new to town or wanted to get into music in the punk scene, you met people there. And then there's always somebody, do you play bass? Do you blah, blah, and you start. So it's wild. It's still the same kind of thing with underground comedian.
I feel like comedy. I just watched that, and this isn't like particularly early punk rock at all, but I watched that documentary "Meet Me in the Bathroom," where it was about like, you know, New York scene and so good. Oh my God, I loved it, and I'm mostly because I love all of that music. Like I found a lot of that music later on in my life, like the Strokes, Moldy Peaches, and all of them.
Right.
But I really really love that music, and I think I would have loved it a lot if I could have listened to it when I was younger. And I feel like a lot of what they were doing at the time is very reminds me a lot of what we're doing here in Nashville comedy and like indie comedy. It's like, oh, you're out every night of the week, you're meeting people, you're traveling, you're broke, but you're making it happen. And I feel like a lot of people have compared like indie comedy to like the punk rock scene in like the 60s and then in the 90s and stuff, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Because honestly, the sort of the underground Black Flag, the old punk rock band, like 1984 5, there's still people are working off the circuit that they just went out like a ship and met people, and then they would swap numbers, and everybody had fanzines, and you could basically talk to your buddies who had done this, and you could find band houses to stay at. All that, all pre-internet. I don't know how word got from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast through DC, all that, but there was a pipeline that Mike Watt from the Minutemen, he still drives basically the same routes when he goes out. It's wild. It still stands. But yeah, they were kind of the first do-it-yourself completely, you know, even the Sex Pistols had a record label. A lot of these guys were like, nobody wants us, so we're just going to have to build our own record label and
do it ourselves,
buy our own van and go out and just do it.
It's so cool. And like how much work that takes is absolutely insane. Like even like just to get to that point of getting on the road, and then all the troubles you have while on the road, you know, that's wild. That's really cool. Just
guaranteed. It's pre-cell phone, pre-internet, pre-MapQuest. It's just
a lot of talking to people.
Yeah,
face to face.
And I guess you just did. Yeah, she had a lot of.
We don't have to do that,
right? It's so nice. It's like, oh, can I just send like an Instagram DM? It's like, hey, can I do this? You know, and then probably don't even have to see the person. Don't have to deal with them.
Yeah. But the cool thing is now you start in comedy. You can really start with, which I do all the time when I want to know a question. How do you start a comedy career? And you're going to get tons of information where you didn't have that back then. You just had, if you didn't know somebody, you didn't know what to do.
Is that the advice you would give young comedians, younger than you because you're young, but young comedians starting out? Would you say just Google how to do comedy?
How to write a joke?
Listen to every Mark Maron podcast ever made, and I'd say just like look up if there's a local comedy scene in your area, and then just the main advice I would give is just don't be shitty. Just don't be an asshole, because you can bomb and be really bad at comedy. You will be like when you start out. But if you're just like polite and nice, it's going to be fine. But like if you're shitty, and you can't be both. You can't be shitty and not funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Venn diagram, there has to be some overlap somewhere. You'd be surprised by how many people don't think that's the case. How many assholes I meet every night of just like, I'm like, where the fuck did you come from? So just, I think that's, I also listened to your y'all's episode with Joe List. I love him. I think he's so funny.
Oh, yeah.
And I hit the point he made on that episode too, not to like regurgitate an old episode on this current episode.
No, it's good.
He was saying that comedians come out are like so professional already, like out of the womb, like ready to go. And I've heard John Mulaney and like Pete Holmes say the same thing, where like people, I guess in my generation, maybe even a little bit younger, of like comics who are starting out, like they already know how to have a comedy career because there's so much information out there. And I would agree with that, but I feel like people kind of put the cart before the horse, and they don't write anything. They just go off of vibes. They don't go off of substance, you know?
You forget you got to make people laugh and write good jokes. That's really you got to start.
That's all it. Yeah, that's the fundamental. Like there's a quote that I keep in the back of my head all the time where there's two types of like artists or like content creators, whatever. And there's those who have something to sell and those who know how to sell it. And ideally you're both, but like you have people that know how to sell something, but they don't have it. And then you have people who are brilliant, but they just don't want it hard enough, or they just don't know what to do with it. So it's kind of a hard mixing the two somehow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And writing jokes is not easy. It's like, it's very simple to say, just write some jokes and get up there and say it, but it is not easy.
No, because it's like you can have this whole thing play out in your head, and like, this is going to go great and this is funny. And then either, again, going back to like, it could be a great joke, but it could be a bad environment, or, you know, and you just don't get good feedback on it. So that could maybe kill a good joke, and that sucks. But that's just kind of how it goes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, as a musician, if you write a song and you got another one that, if your new song sounds a lot like the one people love, you know, it's going to go over well. You know what I mean? But if you write a joke and you're like, I got a joke that's kind of like that, there's no guarantee it's going to go over well, you know,
everywhere,
or even with the same crowd. It seems like there's more in the balance. Like with music, it's like, oh, that reminds me of that song, but jokes sort of have to stand on their own, or bits or whatever. It's like that reminds me of The Machine or something. You'd be like, you know,
right. It is almost so much easier. It is so easy for people to write off in comedy, like, oh yeah, that sounds like someone else. Well, they did that. Like it is a weird thing with music where it's like, oh, that reminds me of this song, and it's kind of looked at with fondness. Where with comedy, there can be times where you hear something that kind of is similar to a more famous joke, and you're just like, ugh, well, someone else already did it better. You know what I mean? And you just turn your brain off, and it may just be as much as like a couple lines in like the setup or something. It could be completely different. I don't know. I'm not saying that comedy's harder than music, but it definitely is a lot more finicky.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it's harder to come up with stuff, but it's
just hard. They're both hard in different ways, right? Because definitely when you're playing music and singing and trying to, you know, view a crowd and see what's going on, that's a lot too. There's a lot in there that you're thinking about. So,
and if your song's sucking in the middle, you can't just sort of change out in the middle of the song and lead it another way, you know,
or stop and tune in the middle of the song, or just stop the
right. Just like, what? Stop.
I had another question for you before I want to let you go. Let me see if I can think of it. Shit. What do your religious parents think about you doing comedy?
Well,
I don't know.
I haven't told them yet.
Well, Cortney, I have them here for you.
Right. Come on out. I don't know. I had alluded to that I was interested in it, like early on, but we have an interesting relationship. We talk, but like not really about anything. And I don't really think my parents are really that online in general, you know, like which is honestly better for everyone, to be fair. Across the board, they're not getting their computer hacked every 5 seconds from a virus. You know what I mean? If they just stay away from the computer, it's better off for everyone involved. So I don't think, you know, if they do know, we've never talked about it. Really beyond like, oh yeah, I express interest in it, and they're like, oh yeah, you're funny, whatever. And like that was like maybe like 6 years ago when I brought it up, versus now where like I don't think they have an opinion, and if they do, they have not shared it. Which if they've not shared it and they have an opinion, it means it's probably not a very good opinion. So.
Well, at least you prepped them with a music career first, so it's not like, oh great, you know, it's
right. No, I was supposed to use my talents for God's glory, so I don't.
Yeah. We're supposed to be in worship bands, is what we're supposed to be doing.
Ooh,
yes,
worship bands.
Wear an undershirt underneath my t-shirt in case when I raise my hands to pray, my belly doesn't show, that kind of deal. So, you know, Raelyn, I know you know.
We can't make men lust, you know.
You also have the drummers with the plexiglass in front of them.
Also can't wear sleeveless shirts because our shoulders might
turn up
thin.
Yeah. Right. My shoulder hairs might turn on a man. So
no hard-ons in the sanctuary.
Right.
Oh, good Lord. Cortney, you're awesome. Thank you so much. Tell everyone where they can follow you online.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to be Cortney Warner 13. That's Cortney. And then Warner, like Warner Brothers, the number 13 on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Venmo, really anywhere you want to find me.
Venmo Cortney.
Yeah, that would be great. That's really the one I care about the most. I don't care. I mean,
I like
yeah,
that. Follow me on Venmo.
yeah, follow me on Venmo.
I like that.
Let's be friends on Venmo.
Please just know how many times I'm sending money for groceries.
Yeah.
um
Can't wait to hang out with you again.
Oh, dude, same. I can't wait to hang out again soon. Please, you got to come to I also run a show at the Bowery Vault every Wednesday. Raelyn's got to come whenever Raelyn wants to come and do a set. You're more than welcome to come.
Yeah,
and
you should
hang
come
out
do
with
some
us.
too, like open mic stuff. JB hasn't dabbled into comedy yet, but he might be into if there's like an open mic or something,
You
right?
never know. I'll go watch.
We always have like a nice little crowd, and the Bowery Vault's they have a lot of cowboy boots on the front of the stage, so you guys, you feel at home there. I feel like very musically inclined. So
yeah, I played some songs over there this last Friday. Played like 3 songs at my friend Janelle's show.
Yeah, I was supposed to do comedy on that, but unfortunately I got double booked with another show that night at D's, so I wasn't able to do that.
I might have took your spot. I think I filled someone. She's like, I had somebody, but they,
that was probably
me.
Your spot. Nice.
You guys are sisters.
We are.
I love it.
Shirley and all. Yeah. All right.
It.
Well, thank you so much, Cortney. And I'll come to the open mic and we'll be in touch.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much,
nice
guys.
Nice to meet you. This is fun.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
He's great. Okay. Cortney Warner is my favorite comedian.
Yeah, man, I like her. She was cool.
She was. She's great.
Homegirl.
Yeah. Homegirl, comedy buddy.
Streetsboro, Ohio, right close to where she's from.
Nashville, Tennessee, right where we live. I mean, shit.
Fuck. Enjoy your groceries. I know your mama's name.